Okay. Okay, so hey guys. So we're in this will be week 5, and this week we're going to model a handbag. Um, so, I got Maya open here, and the handbag is going to be a sort of mixture of the things that you've learned so far. So a little bit of organic modeling, sorry, a little bit of, you have not really learned organic modeling. So you're going to get into some organic modeling today. And you're also going to be using the principles of um, mechanical modeling, or what we call hard surface modeling. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go up to File, and I'll set my project, make sure that my project is set to my set in the proper place. So my Maya folder here, Brad Stillite project Maya. I'll set that, and then I'll go save scene as, and it's found my Maya folder in scenes, but I'm not going to save it in scenes. Obviously, this is a model, so I'm going into the assets folder, props, and handbag. Okay. Now I've already modeled a handbag here, but I'll start a new one. I'll say new handbag. Okay. And say handbag 01. Okay. I'll save that. So let's get some reference up. I'm going to go and I'll create a plane. So I got a polyplane here. I'm going to go into the inputs of my polyplane. First thing I'll do actually is I'll rename my polyplane. So I'll call it ref plane 1. Okay, ref plane 1. And then in my inputs here, I'm going to change these subdivisions of width and height to 1, because I don't need a heavy amount of subds, and I'll just make my plane bigger, and I'll rotate it in the X 90 degrees. Okay, and I'll scale it down maybe a little bit. And I already know that my image that I'm going to map onto this is 960 by 720. I'll have to scale it down again. I can just change these values here actually, so I'll say scale value of 0.1. Okay. So here's my reference plane. And I'm going to create some UVs. So planar mapping projected on the Z, and apply that. And so I've got a projection on this. You can see inputs polyplanar projection 1. And then I'll say assign favorite material. So I'll say Lambert. Okay. So I right clicked and I went down to assign favorite material, Lambert. Okay. Same thing you could do is go into the hypershade, right? You can open the hypershade and you can click Lambert and it'll create a new Lambert material. But since I already created Lambert 2, that's there. Okay, and it's already applied onto this guy. So Lambert 2, I'll say ref material 1. Just over here. And in the color channel, I'm going to go and find my image. So I'm going to click the color channel checker box here, and I want a file node. So again, create new render node, file. And once I do that, I can click this little folder here and find my reference images. So in Maya, images, reference, and I'm going to go and grab my HB2 dimensions handbag. So I'll open that up. then I'll hit the 6 key. Okay, and there you go. So I'll close my hypershade, and I'll do a save. So here's my bag. So I'm going to throw this onto a display layer, okay, by going into the display tab, and I'll click this little button here, got a new layer, and I'll say ref disp. Okay. And I'll just move this back and out of the way, and maybe move it down a little bit or something. Okay. So I can see that my handbag is 21 centimeters wide and 13 centimeters deep and 2 centimeters tall. So 2 by 13 by 21. So let's go ahead and get started and start modeling our handbag. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab this this box shape. And I'm going to model the box shape there. Okay, so create poly primitives cube. Okay, cube. So I got my polycube here, and I know that it's 21 centimeters wide, so this way. That's on the X. So 21 wide and 2 centimeters high. Right, you can see over here, 2 centimeters high. So I'll say height 2, and 13 centimeters deep. So depth 13. Simple enough, right? So those are our basic dimensions of our handbag. So I'll move this up a little bit so it's sitting on the top of the grid. Okay. Okay. So let's go ahead and add a nice line of symmetry, because when I look at this, I can see that this is symmetrical, a symmetrical object from this side to this side, minus these details. But for now, we can work symmetrically. Okay, and then when we're done working symmetrically, and we need to make it add those finishing touches, we can make it asymmetrical afterwards by adding those details after the fact. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing, line of symmetry. So the way we can split this guy right down the middle here is, we all know, we can go to edge mode, grab one of these edges, hold control and right click, go to edge ring utilities, and then to edge ring and split. Okay. And we might as well just add another, we might as well split it split it on the Z axis as well. So I'll just grab that edge and hit G to split it there. Okay. So we have a nice line of symmetry here. So when I hit the 3 key and I smooth this, I'm going to take a look at this shape and see what it's giving me. Well, okay. Again, because Maya is averaging the distance between here, here, and here, it's pulling these corner verts in quite a bit. So it's really rounding this edge a lot more than I want it to. Because if I look at my image here, you can see that these corners are not quite as rounded as this. You could say that they're more rounded, more like this is what I have now, but I don't want that. I want what the image is giving me, which is a nice tight rounded corner. Okay. So how do we remedy that? Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to split this edge and split this edge. And already you can see that because Maya is calculating the distance between this guy and this guy and this guy, it's giving me a lot less of a rounded corner. And I can even go on the side here and say, well, I'll split these guys as well, like that. Okay, so that's a lot closer. It's starting to round this corner like I like it. Okay. But I might even say, well, no, not quite. I'm going to split those again. Now that's giving me something that I like. Okay. Because again, Maya is saying, okay, I'm going to look at the distance between these corresponding vertices, this vert, this vert, this vert, and it has a lot less to travel, so it's not going to, so it's really going to hold that shape nicely for me, which is what I want. Okay. So I've got an okay base shape, which is good. But you know what? For the purposes of keeping my polygon spacing nice and even, I'm just going to split these two as well. Okay, so I have nice even topology, which is nice. That's good. Okay, so I got an okay base shape here. I would say so myself. Let's take a look at our reference again, and you can see that we have this seam down the middle here. Okay, so we know we're gonna need an edge loop in the middle there at some point. So I think it's fair to say we can split our object down the middle, give it an edge loop there. And the differences in volume, or I guess not volume, but shape. The front is, I would say, a lot more flat than the back is. The back looks rounded to me. And the front, since it's sort of like the front edge here, since it's where the zipper is, I feel like this is a little bit more flat. So why don't we go ahead and first of all just get that first line, that first line in here where that seam is going to be. So I'll grab this edge and I'll hit G to split that. So we've got a nice center line here. I'm going to hit save. And so we got a nice center line here. But now we want to get that seam kind of working for us. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's get that seam working. So to get a seam, we need that center line, which we've already got, but we also need to start splitting these two guys. So we're going to split these two guys. And after I've split these, I'll select one of those edges by double clicking it. Okay, so I double click this edge loop. And what I'm going to do is go to the scale tool, and I'll switch to my front view. And I'm going to scale it on the X so that it sort of comes out like this. Okay, it's about like that. I'll grab this edge down here, move it out as well, just on the X-axis. So if I come back into my 4 views, I can see that on the X-axis I've sort of come out like this, which is exactly what I want. Okay. Now I'm going to grab both these edge loops again and then deselect everything except for these back loops, these back edges. Okay, so if I hit the 4 key and I kind of rotate around, I'll turn my grid off. I can see that really all I have selected are these back edge loops. Sorry, not back edge loops, but back edges. So I'll go to the W key, I'll hit W to go to the move tool, and I'm going to move it back in the Z to create that sort of. Okay. Alright, so I can see I'm starting to get a bit of shape here. A bit of that rounded corner. Okay. But it still doesn't really look like a seam, does it? It looks like more of a pillowy cushion divot. But we don't want that. We want it to be a nice hard seam. So how are we going to get that effect of that hard seam in there? Well, what we got to do is we got to take this middle guy and I would bevel it. Okay, so we're going to split this edge. We're going to bevel it. So I'm going to go to Mesh Tools, and I'll say Show My Modeling Toolkit. Okay, and I'll say Bevel over here. I'm going to click Bevel, and I can just left click and drag until it's really nice and tight. Okay, and I might give it a value of, let's say, 0.05. Okay, so there's a start. Okay, that's a start. And now what I need to do is I need to add another edge loop. I need to add another edge loop here. So what I'm going to do is, let's say, to edge ring and split. and I'll add another edge loop here to edge ring and split. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is go to the scale tool with this edge ring in the front view, and I'm going to scale it on the X just like I did the last guy, like that. And I'm going to move this edge loop down. So let's zoom in, and we're going to hit the smooth key while we're doing this. So I'm going to hit the smooth key, I'll hit the 3 key, and you can see as I move that bottom edge down, it really tightens up this loop, kind of brings it in and creases it like that. So you can see, because again, Maya is saying, alright, well, I'm only measuring the distance between this guy and this guy, so it's really tightening up that edge there. Okay, so the same thing with this guy. I'm going to double click that edge, and I'm going to scale it on the X just a little bit until it's about matched with that top loop that I put in there. So I'm just going to scale it a little bit more. Okay, and I'll go to the move tool and move it up just like that. You can see, look at that, that's beautiful. So this is the effect that we want. We want the round to come in, we want it to be rounded, and then just get really nice and tight in there like that. Okay, and let's just take a look at the rest of our form. I'll go to object mode. You can see that it looks pretty good. That's not bad, right? It looks pretty good. Okay, so we've got our seam in there, which is good. So we have that seam there. Now what we need to do is we need to get that front edge, that front face to look more like it should. So if let's take a look at our reference. So we've got this sort of stitched front edge in here. It's sort of a stitched in piece of fabric with this where the zipper is. So what we want to do is model in this seam here. So the way we can do that is we can just grab all these faces. Just grab all these faces on the front here. So what I'll do is I'll come over and I'll window over all this stuff. So I grabbed all those faces, and then I'm just going to hold control and deselect this stuff here. So it's just grabbed this stuff here. Okay. So for this guy, I want to go into my edit mesh extrusion tool. I don't want to use, I'm not really crazy about this extrude tool for really tight things. Just because it has a different UI, different user interface. So I've got this here, and I've got all my my selected faces. So I'm going to go over to face under edit mesh, and I'll come down to extrude and just activate the extrude tool. And you can see my extrude tool comes up, which is nice. It's right over here, and that's great because it can focus on the effect that it's having on the corners here. So let's go ahead and start making some extrusions to get that seam in. Okay. So here's my extrude tool, and the first extrusion I'm going to make is an offset extrusion. So I'm going to middle mouse drag over offset, and I don't want to go that way. I want to go this way. Okay. So value of 0.1 looks not too bad to me, so I'm going to stay with 0.1. That looks pretty good. And what I'm going to do to hold this extrusion that I've made here is I'm going to hit the G key to repeat the extrude tool command, which will hold the offset that I've made here and allow me to make a new one. So I'm going to hit G, and now I can say, okay, I'm going to offset this just one more time inward, and you can see this is pretty touchy. So I'm going to use a value of like 0.005. 0.0, no, that's not working. 0.05, yeah, 0.05 is about what I would like to use. Um, that seems about right. Or even rather, instead of 0.05, I would even say 0.01. 0.01. And the reason I'm saying 0.01 is because I'm coming out to get my shape, and I came in 0.01 to get a nice corner here, and now what I'm going to do is the next extrusion I'm going to do is a thickness extrusion to push these faces inward. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to hit G, and now I'm going to use the thickness extrusion tool, this thickness attribute, and I'm going to push that face inward, just like that. Okay. And I'd say a value of maybe negative 0.1 will work for me. Okay. And now I'm going to hit the G key again to start a new extrusion, and I'm going to use an offset because I want to come inward now. Actually, no, sorry. No, an offset would work. Offset would work. We don't want to add too many edge loops, so let's say offset. Offset's fine. Okay, so I'm going to come in, and I'm going to come in by a value of 0.05. Okay, so I like that. 0.05 is about what I would like. You know what? I might even say 0.025. 0.025. And again, whatever value works for you best is what you want to use. So that looks about right to me. And I'm going to start another extrusion. Okay. I'm going to hit the G key, and I'm going to use thickness this time to come back out. About like that. 0.1, perfect. And I'm going to hit the G key again to offset this. So I'm going to come in by a little bit, just like that. And I'm going to see what that gives me. All right. So that looks pretty good. I like that. And then I'll hit the Q key to get out of that. So now you can see I've got this sort of shape like this. Okay. But one thing I noticed is that this is actually a little bit too flat for me. So if I come in and I say, well, if it's a little too flat, okay, so let's go in, and I'm going to grab these faces. I'm going to grab these two faces in the middle. And actually a cool way that I can see these two faces, these two little guys here, a cool way that I can grab this stuff in a sort of selective way is I can use what's called grow selection. So if I grab these two guys and I want to start selecting all of these faces on the outside around it, I can hold shift and start pressing the right bracket key, not right bracket key, the I guess you could say the same key as the period key on your keyboard. So you see the little period, and above that it has a right bracket. Oop, I held shift for too long. So shift, and you can see the right bracket arrow key allowed me to select all of those faces because it grew the selection out. Kind of cool, eh? So now what I can do is I can just sort of pull this stuff out a little bit, which I want to do. Okay, I'm going to pull this stuff out a little bit because it's sort of giving me a little bit of a bulge here, which is kind of what I want. I don't want that volume to be as flat as it was. Yeah. Okay. It's giving me a little bit of a bulge, which is nice. That's what I wanted. And I think I might even give this a little bit more shape by maybe throwing an edge loop right in here somewhere and then scaling it in so it's got a little bit of a taper to it. So I'll say insert edge loop, and I'll throw an edge loop, maybe one here, and maybe one about here. Okay, so if I scale this guy from about from the middle box here. I can just sort of taper it inward a little bit like that, and down on the Y. So you can see it's got a little bit of that taper to it. Right. So that's kind of nice. Okay, so it's got a little bit of that, little bit of a taper. See, that shape is sort of coming out like a horn, that horn shape. It's nice, a little more organic. I'm gonna do a save as. So I'll call this handbag 02. Okay. Okay. So that's there like that. And at this point I can start adding some variation to the shape of this thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to start just varying the shapes of this guy in smooth mode. Okay, so I'm just going to take these verts and I'll move them out a little bit, just like that. You don't want to go too crazy with it, just ever so slightly moving things around, making things a little more, giving everything some asymmetry, so that it's, you know, move this up just a smidgen. Move these guys down, and I can hit the B key to use what's called soft selection. So if I hit the B key, right, gives me a sort of a brush size. If I hold the B key and left click, I can see that my brush size changes. Okay, so I can just sort of move things up. Okay, take this, move things down a little bit. Right, so we're just varying the shapes of things, moving it outward. I can grab this, just start pushing some things around, just ever so, here and there. Okay, just like that. Pull this up a little bit, pull this down a little bit. Okay. Okay, so I've all of a sudden I've got this nice sort of, this nice organic shape. Okay. Just sort of varying things a little bit, just making things a little more interesting. Just making things a little more interesting. Okay, just like that. Pull that out. Pull that out. Pull this out. Right. Just playing around with shapes. Okay. Nice. Okay, so I got something that's pretty good for a handbag. Okay. Can make my brush size a little bit bigger, and maybe just play around with these shapes a bit more on the tops and bottoms. Make things a little less symmetrical. Really kind of play with it with my soft selection. So that's good. Okay. So I like that. I like that. Okay, not bad. So now let's think about getting the zippers into our model here. So the way I'd like to approach this is a nice, easy, simple way. I'm going to open my outliner. So I've got my cube. I should rename this to handbag. Oops. Make sure to say mesh underscore handbag base 1. And the reason I say base is because we're going to be adding things like zippers and things to this. Okay. So let's go ahead and add those zippers. So how do we do that? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a couple of cubes. So I got a cube here, and I'll call this mesh zip link 1. Okay. So I'm just going to bring this over here, and I'm just going to scale it to the appropriate size of what a zipper link would be. And I want to check my reference. Okay, so how big is one of these? Is one of these things. So one of these links is quite small, actually. Okay, so it's really quite small. So we're going to try and replicate that. So it's probably about like this. That. Okay, a bit like this. Looks about right. Okay. So now what I want to do is I actually want to select all of the edges in here, and I want to bevel them. And the reason is, if I left this completely square without any beveled edges, when we throw a reflective shader on this, it's not really going to look like a metal piece, because you won't get any specular highlights. And when you have just a slight bevel, just one bevel on all these edges, it's going to give you some nice specular highlights. So I'm going to click bevel, and I'm just going to do this, just like that. Okay, that's all I need. Just a bevel on those edges. Perfect. So I got one link here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy and move it in to sort of the center there. I'll focus in on this, and I'll duplicate it once. Okay, duplicate is Control D, and I'm just going to move it just about like that. Just about like that. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to take these actually and just move them in a bit, because be about like that. Okay, so that looks about right to me. Maybe move it down a little bit so that this sort of center seam is sort of lined up with that part there. Okay, so that's good. So now here's the trick. I'm going to select both these guys, and I'm going to group these. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go down to the Mel command line and type group, and then hit enter. And the reason I typed it down here as opposed to hitting Control G is because when you type it in the center, this line down here, it actually centers a group between your objects. So it doesn't group it and leave the group at the origin. The group's pivot will be right over the object, so that's kind of important. So I'm going to call this mesh zip link 1 grp 1. I'll call it mesh zip link grp 1. Okay, for group. So now I have a group of these two guys, and what I can do is I can duplicate that group and just start moving it over. So I'm going to duplicate this, start moving it over a bunch of times. Okay. And in just a second, I will speed this process up. So you can see over here I'm duplicating all these groups. Okay. So now what I'll do is I'm at the point now where I can say, alright, I'll take all these, I will group them, and I'll duplicate that group. And just move these down like this. Okay. You can see that my groups are getting a little bit out of sorts. I'm going to have to sort of move them out on the Z because I moved my geometry around, which is fine. Okay, so that's good. So now what I can do is I can just grab this group by hitting, I can select one of these guys and hit the up arrow, and that's going to select the group that these two are in, and I'll just delete those. Okay. Oop. So select that guy, hit the up arrow, delete that group. Select that guy, hit the up arrow, delete. Select, up, delete. Okay, so now, if I look back at my reference, it's got one of those zipper stoppers at the end, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, you can see there's a big piece at the end, that zipper stopper. So, I'll take one of these guys, I'll duplicate it, and just move it up here. Let's scale it up. And scale it on the X. Just like that. Okay, so just like that. And maybe move it in. Okay. Okay. So now, if I come in and I look at this, these are sort of out of sorts. So what I think I'm going to have to do is grab these by hitting the up arrow and go to the move tool and just sort of just go through, select up, select up, select up, select up, select up, select up. So I'm just going down the line, selecting one of these guys, hitting the up arrow to get into its group, and up, and just repositioning these on the Z axis so that they're not poking out so much. Okay, so that makes sense. So again, you just select any one of these guys, and you hit the up arrow on your keyboard, and what it'll do is take you into the group that the two pieces reside in. So, okay, select one up, and just move it on. Okay, so that's pretty clear, right? You guys are good at this now. Okay, and there you go. We have our zippers in place, zipper links at least. So now what do we need now? We need the actual zipper. So we're going to go in and I'll hit save. And I'm going to say create polyprimitives cube. And I'll move the new cube out here. Okay. And I'll scale it on the Z. Okay. And let's get the base shape in. So how big is the zipper going to be? Well, it'll probably be around this big, and or that wide and that tall. Maybe a little taller. So now I need to turn this cube into a rounded sort of zipper piece, meaning this guy here, you know, that zipper, the zipper base. Okay, so I need to model that. So how do I model that? Well, first thing I'm going to do is, just like I modeled my handbag base shape, I'm going to grab one of these edges and I'll split it down the middle first, and then I'll split this down the middle there too, and then I'll hit the smooth key. I'll hit 3. See what that gives me. That's too cubic. So I'm going to throw another edge loop here, and I'm going to scale this guy on the Y, and I'll go into vertex mode by right clicking. I'll go to vertex, hit the 4 key, okay, and I'll grab these outside verts. Okay, so I've got these outside verts, and I'll go to the scale tool, and on the Y axis, the up and down axis, I'll scale it this way. Okay, so I'll smooth this now. Let me smooth it, see what it gives me. Better. Okay, better. I might grab these verts here as well and scale them in a little bit. Okay, the 5 key, 3 key. Yeah, that's better. And I'll go to edge mode, and I'll hit the G key to repeat that last command of splitting the edges, and I'll pull this up like this. Not bad, yeah. Now I'm liking that. And now what I might do is just throw another edge loop here and move it to the end so that it holds this guy. So you can see when we smooth it, it's really crisping up that edge there. And I want to do that because it's a mechanical piece, so I want it to be really straight on the ends. I might do that here as well and just kind of pull this out to the end. 3 key. And I might just split this guy. And just like that. Just like that. And I'll split this guy and move it closer. Okay. So now what I'm getting is this sort of mechanical piece here. Okay. And it looks weird when it's rounded like this on the side. I want it to be flattened. So the way I'm going to flatten this out and crisp up this top edge is I'm going to grab this and split it and move this closer to the top. And that's pretty much going to do it. And I'll hit save. Okay, beautiful. So there's my zipper base. And then I can just grab one of these and duplicate it. Really. I'll rotate it on the Z. I'll come up to my channels here, rotate it on the Z 90 degrees. I want that value to be 90, and I'll pull it in here and just scale it around. Because no one's really going to notice these things. We're not going to be looking at the zipper from really close up, so we can just go ahead and okay, there's our zipper base. And if I really wanted to, I could pull this guy out and give it I could split this up, split this a couple of times, and grab this vert and pull it in this way. And could split this guy to hold those upper edges. Okay, just like that. Split this, and grab these guys and pull them down. Just like that. And there you go. A more detailed approach to the zipper. Just sort of move this in here. Just like that. Okay. And now we need the ring. So we need some rings here. We need some of these rings in here to attach to that. Okay. So create poly primitives. I'll create a cylinder. Okay. Actually, you know what? I'm going to stop the video here, and I'll carry on again in another video. We'll take a break because we've done quite a bit here. But we're well on our way to having a nice looking handbag. You can see, and there are some differences. We can even improve this even further, but I think we'll stop the video here and carry on in another video. Okay, so good job so far, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, I'll do a save. Always save your work.